Have you ever wanted to make an animated wallpaper? Something that looks a little bit like this? Well, in today's video, I'm going to show you how. Hello my friends, Rob here from Button Press Graphics, back with another video. And like I showed you in the intro, today I'm going to be showing you how to make an animated background. Now, full disclosure, for this you are going to need two programs, not just Inkscape. However, both of these programs are open source, so it is completely free to make this animated wallpaper. The programs in question are going to be, of course, Inkscape and DaVinci Resolve, made by Blackmagic. I will leave a link in the description for both programs so you can visit them and download them for yourself. Once you have them both downloaded, you can start. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, the first program we're going to be using is, of course, my personal favorite, Inkscape. And when you do, you need to set up your canvas. Now, the canvas is going to be a little bit different to what we normally do on this channel, so I will run you through exactly what settings I have. Now, if you come up to this little button here that says Open Document Properties, you will open this window. Now, at the moment, I have got a very low resolution because the resolution will increase as soon as we put the DPI up. Now, that's dots per inch for anyone who doesn't know, and that relates to the quality of your save files. Now, we're going to be making all the elements within Inkscape, but then putting them all together within DaVinci Resolve. So once you have the same settings as me, or whichever settings you want when it comes to the resolution, you can click out of it. Now, primarily, the reason I made this to begin with was, as you can see on screen right now, to put it on part of my website. I think it looks really cool, and I was inspired by a computer game, but I wanted to know if I could make it for myself. Now, a little bit of housekeeping to begin with. As you can see on screen right now, this is very versatile. Using the same simple shapes, you can create a design like I have on screen. So if you have chosen a light background to go underneath all the elements that you're going to be creating, then you will need to get dark lines. And if you have chosen a dark background, you will need bright lines. So let's begin. Now, first you're going to need the aforementioned background, the static image that is going to go behind everything. Now, for this, I go to Pexels. I really like Pexels, I always have, and I strongly suggest going and giving them a try. Everything you can see on there is going to be free to use. Also, it's worth mentioning that it is just as easy to use a video file rather than just a static image. Now, as you can see, I have imported a picture from Pexels, a very light picture with elements of blue. However, I just want the texture of it. So what I'm going to do with it highlighted is I'm going to open my fill and stroke menu right on the top toolbar here. And then I'm going to add a little bit of blur to it, so it just looks like a white and blue texture underneath. Now, as you can see, I have still got the design that I created earlier for this animated background. Now, this is just a simple design primarily made up of squares and circles. Now, as you can see, if I zoom in, some of them have got markers on them, which I showed how to use in a previous video, and others are just using the dashes or the dots, that kind of thing. If we was to open the fill and stroke menu again and then come to stroke style, As you can see, for this outside circle, all it is a large circle with a stroke, no fill, and we've got the dash pattern here. Now when it comes to the thickness of your strokes, anything over 0.4 is going to look too thick, but you do want some variation. So what I have found with certain ones is 0.2, 0.1 in certain cases are going to work perfectly. But you need that variation so other things will not stand out as predominantly as your base shapes. Now when it comes to this one here, we have got a slight gradient on it. So just for argument's sake, I am going to show you how to create this pattern here. Now for this, you're going to need to make sure that snapping is turned on. We are going to be using a path effect that I previously went over, the tiling path effect. So in order to do this, first we're going to need to create our shape that we want to tile. Now I'm going to use the squares and rectangles tool, which can be found right here. And then I am going to make sure that I change it to black. And I'm just going to create from the center of this picture a rectangle going up. Now it's still got curved edges from the last thing that I selected, so I'm going to select this button here that says make corners sharp. That will stop it from being rounded, and I'm going to turn the opacity back up. Now that we have our shape, I'm going to make this as thin as I possibly can. So I'm going to go to path, object to path. Now it is a solid shape, and using the select tool, I'm going to zoom in on the center, and then I'm going to reduce the width to something very thin, like so. Maybe a little bit thicker than that. Now the reason I'm readjusting this and then deselecting it so I can see how thick the line is because I want to put a gradient on it at the end. Now because I want to put a gradient on it, you will need it thick enough to see the gradient, but otherwise you can eyeball it and make it however thick that you would like. For me personally, I think that is around perfect. Now I'm going to select that shape and we're going to go to our path effects. If you haven't got the path effect menu open already, you can find it by going to path and then scrolling all the way down to this option here, path effects ... Select that and this window will open. Now if you watched my previous video, you already know how to use this, but for now I'm just going to breeze through it. If you want a more in-depth look at using this tiling path effect, then you can find it in my previous video, which is how to use the tiling path effect. Now with this, I'm just going to use one row and we're going to use 60 columns. Now with the one row and the 60 columns, I'm going to come to the node tool, zoom right in on the initial piece as much as I can, and then click on this top right node and bring it in to the left until they're all stacked on top of each other. Once you have, you need to make sure that this button here, blend rotations from left to right, is selected on the rotate. Once it is, I'm going to select 3 degrees per increment. And now we have something that looks a little bit like this. Now in order to get the cutout where we want, we have to first go to path, object to path to finalize this shape. And now we're just going to use another circle and one of the path commands to cut out what we don't want. So I'm going to hold Ctrl and Shift, create a circle, using my select tool, drag it into the center. And if you want to make sure that it's absolutely perfectly in the center, you're going to need your Align and Distribute menu open, which can be found right here on the top toolbar. Click that and it will open up. Now with last selected from the drop down, I'm going to keep this circle selected, hold shift, select the shape we just created, then we're going to line it up on the vertical and the horizontal axes. With that done, we can deselect it, and then we can select the circle in the middle, and we can hold shift and control to adjust the size. And I think around there should be around perfect. Now I'm going to hold shift again and select the shape behind, and then I'm going to go to path difference. And as you can see, we now have the shape that we want. Now in order to create the gradient effect, we will need our fill and stroke menu. Go to fill and radial gradient. Straight away, of course, you can see that it's faded significantly. Now I'm just going to use this slider here at the top until I get the look that I want. You can also use the nodes on the lines to get the look that you want, and if you want it to fade out even quicker, you can move these lines in. But it is just easier to use these to get the look that you want. Now I'm going to keep that exactly how it is. Now I'm going to right click, duplicate. I'm going to hold shift and control and scale it down. Now with that scaled down, I'm going to come back to the gradient menu, and I'm just going to select this button here which says reverse the direction. And you will get something that looks like this. Again, we are going to use the sliders and create a gradient going in the opposite direction, and this time I'm going to shorten it significantly as well. And there you go, that is how you make this effect. But now how do we take these elements and transfer them over to DaVinci Resolve? Well, that is easily done. However, there are a few caveats that you need to be aware of before you do so. It's a good rule of thumb that when you're creating all of your elements that you want to put together, I suggest putting them all together like I have here. They are all separate shapes, and there is nothing that is grouped together. This now allows you to group certain objects together and then export them as a separate file. However, you also need to be aware that if I wanted to group these three circles on the outside here together and then export them, I'm just going to hold Alt and draw a red line through the outside circles so I can keep all three of them selected. Now we go to our export menu, which you can find going to File and then Export ... It will bring open this menu here. Now even when you select your selection, as you can see, all of the elements in between are still showing in your preview. So if you were to export these three rings and expect them to be the only things that you export, that will not happen. These in the center will also be shown. So if you want to just export a certain element, make sure that you have selected what you want, bring it away from the rest of the design, and as you can see, all of these elements here in the center have now disappeared. Also, the reason that we put the resolution so low when it came to the document properties is because when we turn this DPI up or down, it is going to affect the height and width of the image. So if I was to show you, as I turn it down, as you can see, the width and the height also turn down alongside it. And we want to get the DPI to around 300 so we can make sure that we have got good, crisp, clean lines within all of these elements. If you keep the DPI down at 100, which it is by default, well, I think it's around 97 point something. If you keep it that low, you will find that they will be very pixelated when you render them out and save them. So now I am just going to pick a location for this by going to this little folder here. Now, as you can see in my folder, I have an animated wallpaper folder specifically made for the animated wallpaper that I did previously. Here is the background that I created from scratch, and these are all the files that I used to go over the top. However, these look like nothing can be seen because they are all white. We had a dark background, so we had to use white elements to go over the top. This time I am creating dark elements. So the ones that I've just selected, I'm going to use as the outside circle, and that is what I will call them. Then I am going to select PNG from this little drop down, and I'm going to hit save. And there we go. That is now saved into my folder. I can get rid of it. Then I'm going to choose my next elements. And the reason I am doing them separately is because you may have one rotating to the left and another element rotating to the right. A perfect example of this is this outside ring here that is fading out as it gets further away. I want that to rotate to the right, but I want this one on the inside to rotate to the left. So I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to take this element, drag it away from the rest, and then I am going to repeat the same process. Now that that one's done, I can do that, and then I'm going to repeat for this smaller one. Now the next two I want to have these lines and this circle turning one way, or I might even just leave these static, but I want them rotating in the center. And now the final step is, once I have got the picture that I want, I am going to save this as well. And also, just a side note, you can obviously change the color of any of the shapes that you put on your wallpaper. Just remember that light colors will look well on a dark background, and dark colors will look well on a light background. And now we move over to DaVinci Resolve. Now, when you first start in DaVinci Resolve, you will get a window open that looks like this. This is your database of previous projects. For today, I'm going to select this one here, Untitled Project. This box will always be here, and this is how you select a new project. So double click that and it will start. Now, when you start, you will start on this tab here. The way that DaVinci works, it is all separated into different tabs that appear along the bottom here. Now, I rarely use this tab. I will always use the Edit tab, which looks more like this. Now, in order to get all of your elements into DaVinci Resolve, you need to add them here. It says no clips in the media pool. Now you can click and drag from your file explorer, and as soon as you click and drag all your files, they will appear here. Now I'm just going to select all of the files that I want on my other screen, click and drag them over, and there they all are. Now, of course, you can't really see them because of the dark background. This dark background just signifies that it is indeed a transparent background. But first, we're going to add the background image. And it is as simple as clicking and dragging onto the timeline. Now that you have it on your timeline like this, you need to click and drag this to the right length. Now I want a 60-second long video. So I'm going to select it. And if I hold Alt and use the scroll wheel, I can scroll right in and out. This is just zooming in on the timeline. But when you come near the end, you will see the icon change. I want to click and drag out until the bottom number that you can see says 60 seconds. Just like that. We now have our background image, which is 60 seconds long. But before we continue, as you can see, there is a black border on either side of this image because it doesn't quite fit the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it, and in the top right corner, this box here, this is your properties window. So under the zoom section, I'm just going to click and I'm going to drag. And as you can see, it's just zoomed in on it slightly. So now this is what is going to be in the background. And now I'm just going to start adding all of my elements above this clip here. And then I'm going to extend them so they are all exactly the same length. Now this little magnet icon will mean that when you do, it's a snapping feature. So it's going to snap onto the end, which will stop you from increasing the size past the end point of this clip here. So let's add this in, and this one, and this one. And now you get your first glimpse of what your design is going to look like when you have completed it. But of course, it doesn't look like it did previously. That is because it has set the size to equally match every single piece. So now we're going to go through. We already have the light image in the background. I'm going to go one step up, select the cross. And this will allow us to edit this particular element only. So what you can do now is you can zoom in or out, and as you can see, it is now becoming bigger or smaller depending on where you want to use it. Now I'm going to leave it around there. And I am going to go to the next one. Remember, I am only using the zoom function at the moment, but I want this one to be quite small in the center. Then the next one, and then the next. And I'm just using the scroll wheel to scroll up and down to get to the next one. And there we go, just like that. Now I'm going to just play around with it and tweak it until I get the look that I'm happy with. Once you are happy, you have now got your first look of what your static image will look like. But now we have to animate them. Now this is the only part of this entire process which is going to be kind of difficult to get your head around. But trust me, if you go through exactly what I do, and the more you do it, the easier it will become. Now the center cross, that is the box with the cross going down the center and across vertically and horizontally. I want this to stay static. So I'm going to keep that exactly where it is, and I'm not going to edit that in any way. What I'm going to do is go up to the center shapes. I want that to slowly rotate toward the right, but only very, very slowly. Now the reason I've left this cross is because it is a good visual representation of the angles you're going to need. We're going to be using keyframes. Keyframes are represented by these little diamonds within the properties box. When you select this keyframe, it will put a keyframe wherever this slider is. This is your playhead. So if you was to press the space bar, it will play. And now your clip's playing, but nothing is moving because we haven't told the program what to do. So we're going to put that at the very start. And with the center shapes selected, as highlighted by this orange box, we are going to come up to the rotation angle. Now the rotation angle is set at a 0. If you go to the right, it will plus in degrees up to 360. And if you go to the left, it will minus in degrees going 360. So that basically means it will go to the left or to the right. So if you want it to rotate to the right, you go to the right. If you want it to rotate to the left, you go to the left. If you want to reset it back to its default position, you can go over to where it says rotation angle and double click. And that will automatically set it straight back to 0. Now we want it to start moving from the very start of the clip. So we're going to click this little diamond, and now we have added a keyframe. That means the start position of this element is going to be at 0 and at the start of the clip. Now we only want this to turn very slowly. So I would like it, because it is symmetrical, to turn this point here, come around and finish here. By the time it gets to 60 seconds, it will go back to the start and loop, but this is symmetrical. Now if I had a little dot here, a little circle, just one single circle, but not on any of the other corners, you would see the circle get to here and then reset and then start again. And it will just keep doing this over and over. However, because we haven't got anything there and every single section is the same as the previous, we can just reset it here and we can get a very slow turn. So I'm going to show you now. If we click this playhead and bring it all the way over to the very end, if we set it at 90, that is 1/4 of 360. Hit enter, and that is your keyframe already done. As you can see, this orange little diamond signifies that the keyframe at the end of the clip will be 90 degrees. So if we come back, this would be a perfect example. This is the end of the clip. This is the start of the clip. Nothing changes. But if you press play, as you can see, it is now turning very slowly. At the end of that 60 seconds, it will all look like it's lined up again. Just like that. So that's pretty much how it works. Now this is only a 90-degree shift and it's turning to the left. Now if I want, I can change the next one, this circle of lines on the inside. I'm going to go in the opposite direction and I want it to turn a little bit faster. So I'm going to make this 180 degrees to the left. So minus 180 degrees by the time it gets to the end of the clip. Hit enter and then I'm going to keyframe it. I can go back to the start and double click to reset the first keyframe as the start point. And now if I press play, it is turning a lot faster than the centerpiece, but as you can see, it is always going to reset and it will look flawless. And that is pretty much how to do it. But now you've completed your design, you need to render it. This can be done by going to your delivery tab. That is the rightmost tab at the bottom. Select this, and this is your render settings. Now come to the top where it says file name. Name your file whatever you would like it to be called. I'm going to select white animated background. If I could type properly and without any typos. Then choose the location. Then you can choose your format. This is a drop-down list of all the different formats you can choose. You can go with a GIF, you can go with a MP4. MP4 is usually my go-to. Once you've done, select this button at the bottom which says add to render queue and it will appear here. Now you just have to render it out. Once you have completed it, it will appear in the folder that you chose, and there you go. You now have your very own animated background. Did you know that you can become a member of the Button Press Graphics YouTube channel? Well, now you do. You will get a lot of added benefits and you will directly support the channel, enabling me to make much better content in the future. Also, you can send in your artwork into the creative corner. This is a regular section where I will showcase your work in a future video. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to bid you all a fond farewell and I will see you next time.